Yeah, so Tory leadership contender Rishi Sunak has unveiled a three-part plan to ease the pain of soaring energy bills. Writing in the Times today, he's promising to provide the support required to the people who need it. Well, what does all that mean in practice? We can find out right now here on Times Radio. I'm joined live by the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak. Good morning.
Hi, Matt. It's Rishi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. You slightly panicked me there. There was a short gap, but we've got you. So that's good news. That's good news. We'll come on to energy bills in a moment, but clearly your most recent job as Chancellor of the Exchequer was to oversee the economy. The latest GDP figures out today show the economy shrank by 0.1%. The Bank of England says it's only going to get worse over the next year. Is this the start of your recession?
Well, it's pretty clear that the numbers show that inflation is the clear and present danger to the economy. That's what I've been saying for weeks, and it's why the next Prime Minister needs to have a plan to grip inflation and should make it the number one priority. That's what I've been saying for a while. These numbers demonstrate that that's the case. So it's important that we support people this winter with energy bills in particular, because we know it's going to be really tough. And I've just been writing in your paper about exactly my plans to do that. And then we need to have a good plan to grow the economy, where my tax reforms this autumn will get businesses investing and innovating, because that's how you grow the economy in the long run. That's the right plan. And pursuing policies that will make inflation worse and last longer, I don't think are the right thing for the country. And that's what I'm talking to people about everywhere I go.
But you were these figures, the economy shrank in the 3 months to June. You were Chancellor then. Liz Truss says she's got the policies to stop a recession. Why didn't your policies stop the economy shrinking in your last 3 months as Chancellor?
Well, because we're suffering from inflation, as are many countries around the world. And I'm sure you'll be talking to the Chancellor himself about these figures as well. But all I can say is I have been saying for a while that inflation is the danger to the economy. Now, a good chunk of that has come from the result of global energy prices. But the thing we need to now do is look forward. Inflation is forecast to get a lot worse. And I don't think it's sensible in that environment to pump £50 billion worth of borrowed money into the economy, because that's a big gamble with people's mortgage rates, their savings, their pensions. Inflation could get even worse and last longer. I don't want to do that. I want to help people with the cost of living, particularly those who really need our help over what is going to be a difficult autumn and winter, and then do sensible tax reform that is going to make sure that businesses invest more, innovate more. That's what my radical tax plans do, because I know my experience in business, my time as Chancellor, has told me that that is the way that we are going to drive up growth and productivity in this country, because that's what we all want to see. That's how we're going to reduce inflation. That's how we're going to create jobs that pay people well. And my plan is the right one to do that.
Let's talk about your plan then today, on your cost of living plan. You write in the Times that you would do more to help with rising energy bills. The main concrete promise is to cut VAT from bills worth £200 to every household. To every household, which means everyone will get it. I mean, bluntly, honestly, I don't need £200. You don't need £200. Why are you and I going to get £200 when some people in this country can't afford to heat their own dinner?
Because the vast majority of people, Matt, are going to need some help, because the bills are going up at such a rate that many people, even in decent jobs with a decent wage, are going to feel the pinch. And I think it's right that everyone gets some support. And it's very hard to find ways to do that quickly and efficiently to benefit the vast majority of people, whilst excluding a few people at the top, which, if it was possible to do, of course I'd prefer to do that. But you've got to deal with what is practical in government, and that is a good lever that we can pull that gets lots of support to lots of people quickly. But on top of that, you are right. There are two groups of other people who will need more help. People on very low incomes and pensioners. Now, Liz Truss's tax plans do virtually nothing for those people. I don't think that's right, because they will need direct financial support. They don't have an easy way of increasing their incomes. They're going to face a really difficult winter, and the compassionate, conservative thing to do is to provide those people with direct assistance. And that's what I will do as Prime Minister. I announced some as Chancellor, and as Prime Minister I would go further, because the situation is worse than we thought. That's the right thing to do.
We asked listeners to send in questions. We had clearly, as you imagine, lots of questions on this topic. One listener, Ben, made exactly this point about why are well-off people getting this support. He asked, is there not a mechanism for people to be able to give it back? To say, well, I don't need this support, and I know that other people do. Is that something that the government is capable of, that you would consider doing?
No, look, everyone will be able to make their own decisions, and I'm sure if they want to give that money to charity, they're more than welcome to do so.
Would you
Ben and everyone
yours,
else who's asking,
would you give your £200 to charity?
I already said, Matt, that I would do that. And the thing is, though, we tried a version of it earlier in the year where we tried to use the council tax system to get help to the vast majority of people, that not people who were in the most wealthy households. And actually, when we did that, what do? We heard a lot from all the people who were just the other side of the line, who said, hang on, I might be living in a big house, but actually I'm not earning a lot of money and I do need help. And what are you going to do for me? So it's hard to get these things perfectly right. But when you've got a situation of this scale, where the vast majority of people do need some help, then you have to pull this lever. And I'm not going to make any apologies about that, because actually, having been in government, you have to focus on what works. And if I become Prime Minister at the beginning of September, bills are going to go up just a few weeks after that. I want to make sure that I can do something that provides immediate help to millions and millions of families, and that is one of the very few, if not only, levers available. I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. Of course it's not. But that is the best thing to do. I'm very happy if someone's got an alternative that I haven't thought of. They're more than welcome to let me know. But having looked at all the options, I know that that is the best one, combined with extra help for the most vulnerable people, whether it's pensioners or those on low income. And we have established mechanisms for doing that. And as Chancellor, as I said I would use those. And as Prime Minister, I will go further, because those are the people who are going to most need help this winter.
You've said previously in the campaign that the answer to too much borrowing isn't more borrowing. Saying it was irresponsible for Liz Truss to promise that. How are you going to pay for this additional help for bills that you set out at the Times today?
Well, as I set out there, right, the first thing to do is to recognise that this is the number one priority of government at the moment, and we should look very hard at all other areas of public spending to find efficiencies. Now, I've proven that I can do that. As Chancellor, I went and found over £1 billion to send to Ukraine just recently, when we wanted to continue supporting
but how are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for this bills support?
Well, but I'm just saying, well, that's what I'm saying. When we need to, I've demonstrated an ability to find savings and efficiencies across government spending to fund things of this type of magnitude. Beyond that, as Chancellor, I introduced something called the Energy Profits Levy, because I didn't think it was right that because of a war, energy companies were going to make considerably excessive profits. I didn't think that was fair. And so in these exceptional circumstances, I introduced a new levy on those profits, and we can use that money to help reduce people's bills. I think that is a reasonable and fair thing to do in these exceptional times.
But you've spent that money. You've already spent that money. I'm talking about Matt, because prices, because we're now dealing with a situation that is worse than we thought, because prices are higher than we thought. But you introduced the windfall tax to pay for the last massive amount of spending. I'm asking about this new £10 billion.
Right. So what's happened since then, Matt, is that levy is almost certainly likely to raise more money, because the situation is worse with energy prices and they're higher. So that levy will automatically raise more money, which we can use. And that was why I did it. Because it means that if this war carries on, if prices are higher, then as those excessive profits are being made, the government will be able to recoup those and more of those as prices rise, and use those to defray people's bills. I think that's the right thing to do. And I think Liz Truss last night said she opposed doing that and actually didn't believe in that policy. So I think that's a question for her to answer. I think that's the fair thing to do. So it's easy for me to say, yes, I can have the money to pay for these things, because I put in place a mechanism that actually raises money from the energy companies to do so.
You talk about how you can find savings from public services. I think that will surprise lots of people listening to this. Do you think that after 12 years of Conservative government, there's money being wasted somewhere in public services? In fact, during the campaign, you've said that you don't think the NHS is working properly, the welfare system isn't working properly, the immigration system isn't working properly, regional development isn't working properly, the economy is heading for a recession, and we're struggling to find the money to help people right now. Why is it that after 12 years of Conservative government, we're in this situation where, far from being able to find money from public services, the public services are on their knees in this country?
Well, my plan is to start reforming them.
Right?
And that's why I've set out a plan, whether it's on NHS.
Well, but whose fault is it? After 12 years, you've been in cabinet for 2 years. Whose fault is it that the country's public services are on their knees now?
Right. So, look, yes, I have been in the cabinet for the last 2 years. I was Chancellor during the biggest economic shock that this country had faced in 300 years. And I'm really proud of my record of ensuring that our economy and jobs and businesses were carried through it and remained resilient in the face of that shock. That's my track record as Chancellor, stewarding our economy through some incredibly challenging times. But look, I'm looking at the future. right? And what people need to know now is if this guy's Prime Minister, what is he going to do? Well, I tell you, I've got a plan to reform the NHS, to do things boldly and differently. For example, tackling this issue of missed appointments, because that is a sensible reforming thing to do, which means we'll get more productivity and healthcare out of the NHS without putting more money in. But when it comes to illegal migration, I've set out a very clear 10-point plan that will hopefully tackle that.
Let's just focus on the NHS. The problem with the NHS isn't people missing appointments. It's too many people turning up sick and needing help. You expended a lot of political capital introducing the NHS levy last year, the increase in national insurance. And yet today we've got figures, and this was supposed to be clearing up the backlogs in the NHS. 1,000 patients a day are having to wait at least 12 hours in A&E. What happened to all that money? What happened to that plan that we only had 6 months ago?
Yeah, well, so I'm interested in reforming the NHS because it's all very well putting the money in, and that's right. And it was right to support the NHS to recover from the pandemic and to work our way through the backlogs. But that's not sufficient. You need someone who's going to actually be prepared to actually reform things, to change them, because we can't constantly keep putting more money in. We've actually got to be more efficient with public services. That's what my plan does, and I completely disagree with you that the issue is not missed appointments. 15 million appointments every year are missed. And that is not only not valuing our doctors properly, it's depriving many people of the care that they desperately and urgently need. Now, if we can change culture, this is not about making money from fines, this is about changing the culture where that becomes much less acceptable, because if people cancel those appointments in advance, it frees up much more of doctors' time to treat more people faster. We're going to get the backlogs down quicker, more people are going to get the care they need, and we won't have spent another penny because we're already paying for all that time. So that's an example of something that's different, something that's bold, that could make a huge difference to the quality of the healthcare that we're going to get out of the NHS. So actually, that's just one example of one of the things I want to do, but I want to bring that kind of bold approach, radical approach to reforming public services, tackling these challenges that you rightly identified. That's what I want to do as Prime Minister. That's why I'm in this race.
Let's talk about one of the things that everyone in the country is talking about right now, the heat wave, the drought that's happening. There's a hosepipe ban introduced in your part of the world, in Yorkshire, where you're an MP. How's that going to affect you? Are you gardening? How's the swimming pool?
I'm spending virtually no time at home because I'm out on a campaign. So if you think about what I'm doing, I mean, where am I today? I started the day in Oxfordshire and Henley. Now I'm in Windsor and Maidenhead. Then I'm going to Ruislip, then I'm in West London, then I'm in Wimbledon, and then I'm all the way down in Chichester. So that's where I'm spending my days. That's what a campaign is about. I'm out and about. But look, obviously this drought is very serious. And I know the Environment Agency is working with farmers in particular that I care about. I have lots of farmers near my own home who will be concerned about all these things. And it actually shines a light on what we need to do, which is make sure our water companies are fulfilling all their obligations to us in correcting leaks. Because what's not acceptable is if we have an enormous amount of water wasted through leakage and indeed polluting our rivers, that's just not right. And we need to make sure we have a regulatory regime and a set of laws, which we've recently passed in Parliament, that can mean that we can properly hold those water companies to account, fine them when they're not doing the right thing. And that hasn't happened clearly sufficiently in the past. The new powers allow us to do that. And I want to make sure as Prime Minister that we use them to fix this problem.
Do you think we all need to change how we use water as well? Because clearly everyone becomes an expert in saving water when there's a drought like this. But sort of around the year, do we need to change the way we use water, to use less water?
Well, I think actually we're losing, as I understand it, huge amounts of water through leakage. And actually, if we can fix that, that's why I was talking about the water companies doing the right things about investing in infrastructure, stopping unnecessary, preventable leaks, then that would be a really good thing. And we need to make sure that we hold them account to doing that. But also at the same time, making sure that our rivers are not being polluted with sewage that's being released from all these pipes. So as I said, we've got a new set of powers that allow us to find them and hold them to account for doing that. As Prime Minister, I'd want to use them to improve the situation.
I want to ask you about Brexit. We've got a lot of things we want to get through. You've said in your campaign that you would keep Brexit safe. Would Brexit be unsafe under a Remainer like Liz Truss?
Look, I'm just going to talk about what I'm going to do. As I said, I was proud to vote for Brexit, and I believe that we can make an enormous success of it. And as Chancellor, I demonstrated that, right? Because you've got to do things differently. So I came up with the idea for free ports, which are special zones around the country that attract jobs and investment, which we couldn't do properly inside the EU. I came up with that idea as a backbench MP, and as a Chancellor, I've delivered it, and it's working. When it comes to financial services, which is part of my own professional background, I was about to introduce a bill in Parliament working with my colleague John Glenn, who's been a superb minister, where we were going to radically reform all our financial services regulation to make sure that the UK remains the most competitive, dynamic place for financial services anywhere in the world. And what I want to see is that same radicalism across government, right? So whether it's in clinical trials and life sciences, in data, in AI, and agri-tech, there's an enormous amount of opportunity out there for us to create the innovation economy that we need to drive growth in today's age, if we're going to be prepared to be bold about it. And what I did as Chancellor in my department, I want to replicate across government, because that's how we're going to make a big success of this.
On a specific, Niall sent in a message, wanting to know what you're going to do about the Northern Ireland Protocol, because this row has gone on and on for 6 years. If we are outside the EU and outside the single market and outside the customs union, there has to be a border somewhere. And if we're committed to the Good Friday Agreement, that border can't be between Britain and Northern Ireland. So doesn't it then have to be between, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland? Doesn't the border then have to be between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK? What is your plan to sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol?
Well, look, quite simply at the moment, the economy of Northern Ireland is being pulled out of the orbit of the rest of the economy of the United Kingdom, and that's wrong. Whether your grandmother trying to send a birthday present to your granddaughter in Northern Ireland, whether you're trying to take your pet on holiday, whether you're a supermarket trying to sell your sandwiches in all parts of the United Kingdom, these things shouldn't be that difficult. They don't infringe on the integrity of the single market, and we need to fix them. So the bill that's in Parliament is one that I support, that will address them, but it will take time. So I hope as a new Prime Minister I can also sit down and have a constructive relationship with both the Irish, French and European governments to make sure that we can try and see if we can find a constructive solution to this problem, not least because it would mean we could solve it far faster than the time it takes the bill to get through Parliament. But people should be in no doubt. It's wrong what is happening. The Northern Ireland economy should, of course, be an integral part of the UK economy. It shouldn't be sucked out, and I will make sure that that doesn't happen as PM.
I want to ask you a bit about the campaign and how it's going. Are you really still in this? This is not already a foregone conclusion. All the polls suggest that Liz Truss is miles ahead. Why are you traipsing around going to, what was it? I lost count actually the number of places you're going to today. Why are you still traipsing around the country doing this?
Because I'm fighting passionately for the things that I believe are best for this country, and the reception I'm getting everywhere I go is positive. People are responding well, and I think I've got a fantastic chance to make progress in this campaign. And all the polls don't say that, actually, Matt. There was a poll of councillors the other day, and there have hardly been any polls, to be honest, but there was a poll of councillors which showed it was completely evenly split between me and Liz Truss and people who don't know. And that's the point. Actually, you've probably seen some of these hustings. You ask people who's made up their mind. Lots of people have not made up their mind. So, I'm going to go out and fight very hard for every vote. I'm giving it everything I've got, as you can see, across the country. And I'm going to do that till the last day of this campaign.
I have been watching a lot of the hustings. I know you've said you'd take a job in Liz Truss's cabinet were it to go the other way. I'm quite intrigued as to why. You've said that her plans are not morally the right thing to do. How could you possibly serve in her cabinet or even vote through her plans if you don't think they're morally the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all this focus on jobs and all the rest of it is not really what I think anyone is focused on, right? What they're focused on is that what are you going to do for the country? And I've been very clear about what I want to do for the country. I think it is important that we get a grip of inflation. I think it's important that we help the most vulnerable people through what is going to be a difficult autumn and winter. And I think it's important that we have someone who can get to grips with the challenges we face on things like the NHS and tackling illegal migration and making sure that our economy and education system is fit for the future. Now, I'm really excited about delivering that vision. I want us to build an economy that is incredibly dynamic, where our young people have access to all the opportunities and skills they need. And your Education Commission did a superb job at highlighting some of the changes we need to make, actually, that I'd love to have a chance to put into practice, whether it's looking at curriculum reform at 18 to broaden it out, whether it's looking at more technical education in partnership with businesses for young people and adults. Like, those are all things that I want to get on and deliver that will help us build a better country. And critically for our members as well, right, it's important to think, well, who can go and beat Keir Starmer in the next election? I'm confident that I'm the person who can appeal to swing voters everywhere and deliver that election victory for the Conservative Party.
Rich, I know we're very, very, very short on time. You've very kindly said you're going to do the quiz. One last question I want to ask you about. You gave the Conservative MP Mark Fletcher £5,000 to pay for a constituency dinner. He's repaid your generosity by backing Liz Truss. Are you annoyed about that?
No, not at all. It's because I had to cancel at the last minute an event that I promised I would do for him, and people had paid for that, and I didn't think that was right, and I wanted to make sure that those people were not out of pocket because they had come to speak to me and I couldn't be there, and I felt an obligation to make good on that promise. So, and that was my way of doing it, because it was, I've never really had to ever cancel something like that, but I think it was the day that I had sadly left government and resigned. So I just wanted to make sure that those people were not out of pocket. Matt, thank you. I've got a couple of hundred people who are waiting for me next door, and I don't want to keep them waiting anymore. But thank you for your time.
You're not going to do the quiz.
I literally have got 200 people waiting for me next door, and I was meant to be there 2 minutes ago. So
can we get you back?
It's been really nice to talk to you.
Can we get you back to do the quiz?
I'm sure we'll find time, as you can see. Yeah, I'm sure we can find time. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Rishi. Goodbye.
Bye.
Rishi Sunak there. Joining us on Times Radio, talking us through. We've got through quite a lot of your questions. We're not quite as many as we would have liked, but we covered quite a lot of ground there. Rishi Sunak joining us live on Times Radio. We'll get some reaction to that next.